Peace, family. It's your boy PvbloGrey, and we are back with another fucking Drain the Swamp segment. Honestly, I don't know what I'm gonna call this. Probably gonna call this Confederates won the information war, or the civil information war, or how I don't know how the South rewrote history. But sorry man, I'm sitting back and enjoying myself in nature, you know, baking back being bull. But anyway, came across the video a couple days ago that really started sparking my interest. Shout out to these oranges. But how it sparked my interest was that I never seen someone focus about have a focus on the misinformation of what is considered to be factual. And what I mean by that is, like, you know, you go to school and you got your textbook. No one ever questions the material in the textbook or where it came from, the sources, to see if it's actually true. So I happened to come across the video that sparked my interest, and it got the ball rolling on some thought. And I hope this is a lot of what y'all do when y'all watch my videos. It get the ball rolling and make you want to think and go research. So it led me down a rabbit hole, and I'm ready to take y'all with me. But let me move this out the way. Alright, that's the first video. Alright, guess what I want to start with? This video right here. Recorded, this was a video by Vox. This came out in 2017, October 25th, 2017. So they spoke on this a while ago, but this video has so much information, like, bro, it's fucking crazy. So man, let's get into it. Before we do, I want to say like, comment, subscribe, especially if you like what I'm doing here, man. Draining the squad, giving y'all some information, informing y'all on shit y'all didn't know before, or reinforcing information you already knew. But let's get to it.
Listen to how this textbook describes slavery.
The master often had a barbecue or a picnic for his slaves. Then they had a great frolic. Even while working in the cotton fields, they sang songs. The beat of the music and the richness of their voices made work seem light.
Yikes, that's from History of Georgia, a textbook published in 1954 that was taught across junior high schools in Georgia for decades. That sort of language is part of an intellectual movement called the Lost Cause, a distorted version of American Civil War history that's been
I'm gonna pause this. Because I guess my mind is scattered and I ain't sparked this blunt yet. What I'm really trying to go here is like, I know a lot of people, especially right now what's going on, a lot of people got feelings, and they feel some type of way about the Confederate flag and the statues. Oh, this is fucking squirrels. Okay, sorry man, my hood PTSD be on point. But basically it's about people who really are in love with the Confederate flag and what it represents and shit like that, and how they feel it's about certain things. You need to do your history, you need to research and figure out what the Confederate flag's about. That way you won't be as offended. Well, I'm here to tell you motherfuckers, all you motherfuckers that represent and stand behind the Confederate flag, you're wrong. Sorry. Some of y'all that I actually know, and I love you, but the sad truth is, you're fucking wrong. The Confederate flag, it represents a lot of BS. And it probably didn't start that way. I will say anybody who fought in the war should be honored, regardless of what they fought for. Cool, fine. But at the same time, depending on what you actually fought for, I don't know if you should be, you know, celebrated nationally. What your family does on their own, cool. But on the national stage, I put it like this: in private, do that shit in private. You lost the war. They don't let motherfuckers in They don't let Germany celebrate how they lost the fucking war in World War One. They don't do that. Or World War Two, my bad. They don't let these niggas celebrate how they lost that. That just doesn't make sense. But anyway, basically, yeah, this is to show you about what you guys who love the Confederate flag, to show you why this shit is so bad and why people like me have a problem with it. And when I say I have a problem with it, it's not that I have a problem with the actual flag. It's just that the people that the majority of the people that stand behind that flag happen to not like people like me, or people who look like me, or at least that I'm scared of people who like that flag, or because 9 times out of 10 the people who do like it are people who don't like me, or people who don't like people who look like me. And that is what it is. You can ask any black person, if they see somebody who has that flag on them or anything, they're going to assume they're racist. That's just what it is. That's what it's associated with. And you're probably wondering why. Well, we're about to find the fuck out.
Prevalent in the South for a long time. It took shape soon after the defeat of the Confederate States in the war, when Southern historians like Edward Pollard and former Confederate General.
And if you missed what he said, beginning, he had a book, History of Georgia. And in his book, they're talking about how Georgia slave masters dance and frolic, or the slaves dance and frolic because work wasn't all that bad. Okay. Rewriting their own history in order to make it sound good, or make them look better in the light.
General Jubal Early started preserving the South's perspective through their writings. They framed the Confederate cause as a heroic defense of the Southern way of life against the overwhelming forces in the North.
So, let me just be real. To all my white friends and white people who watch this, even white family members, and even some black family members who even follow and subscribe to this dumb shit. To the memory of the heroic dead who fell fighting for liberty, right, and justice. Somebody has to explain what this means, because I don't know about you guys, but whenever someone is trying to explain, because I tried to do my research before doing all of this shit. This is why I even got to this video. I was trying to figure out what the fucking Confederate flag stood for, because I'm not gonna be out here foolishly hating or disliking something that someone told me to dislike. Just like how Democrats tell you to vote fucking Democrat because Republicans are racist and all of that dumb shit, when actually black people, we were the first Republican Party and been voting Republican for years until recently. But that's a different story. We'll get into that later. But just to show you these people who have this tied in their head that the Confederates are good and it represents rebellion, all of this shit that makes you feel good to stand behind it, right? It's because you were taught this. It was deliberately taught to you this way to make you feel good about it.
That narrative has a few basic tenets: the glorification of Confederate soldiers who died for a cause they believed in, the belief that slavery was a benevolent institution, and maybe most importantly, that slavery was not the root cause of the war.
Okay. Pausing it right there. Those three things is usually what these niggas got to say. Oh, these niggas who fought in the war was heroic. Sure, anybody who fights in the war has to be kind of brave, kind of heroic. Enslaved people were happy. Let's be real. It's not true. You know, you're going to say a white slave, there were black slaves, there were black people who owned black slaves, there were black slaves, black owners that owned white slaves too. The whole nine. Yeah, that's fine. Regardless, bro, slavery's bad. Slavery's bad. And anybody who represents the Confederate flag is okay with it. They represented it and condoned slavery, whether it was black or white. It doesn't fucking matter who the fuck was enslaved. Slavery wasn't right. And then third, slavery was not the root cause of war. Okay, motherfuckers, tell me what it was then. Please. Rights? What rights? Rights of being three-fifths of a person? Yeah, fuck out of here.
The Lost Cause is one of the most notoriously effective efforts to rewrite history, and it was done by the losing side. So how did it become so deeply rooted in Southern memory?
What did he say?
Is one of the most notoriously effective efforts to rewrite history. The Lost Cause is one of the most notoriously effective efforts to rewrite history. The Lost Cause is one of the most notoriously effective efforts to rewrite
history. Go on.
And it was done by the losing side. So how did it become so deeply rooted in Southern memory? blamed the United Daughters of the Confederacy.
These motherfuckers right here. These motherfuckers right here. I'm looking at a group of collectively maybe 12 teeth.
The UDC was founded in Nashville in 1894 to preserve Confederate culture for generations to come. The women who made up the group descended from elite antebellum families, and they used their social and political clout to spread the pro-Southern version of the war.
They originated from where? What type of families?
To preserve Confederate culture for generations to come. The women who made up the group descended from elite antebellum families, and they used their social and political clout to spread the pro-Southern version of the war as real history. You've probably seen their efforts to honor the Confederacy, but maybe you didn't.
If you see this on one of them Confederate statues, motherfuckers, that means they put it there. They put it there. With their influence. You want to know how? They'll show you.
Knows the UDC. They're the ones who covered the Southern landscape with memorials for Confederate leaders and soldiers. They used their fundraising and lobbying skills to pressure local governments into erecting monuments in prominent public spaces like courthouses and state capitals.
Installed here next to the state capitol by the United Daughters of the Confederacy.
The United Daughters of the Confederacy donated this memorial to the city back in the 30s.
They put them along roadsides and in parks. Any place that was remotely relevant to the Confederacy was memorialized. By the early 20th century, the UDC had 100,000 members and chapters spread all over the country, but mostly in former Confederate states. And there's a reason they grew so quickly during that time.
So we're talking about roughly 3 decades after the end of the war, and the Confederate veterans themselves are beginning to die off. So there is this push to find ways to...
So only 30 years after the war, you know, after all of the veterans are done fighting, and then they got their kids who they've been telling all their war stories, and because they're old, they probably can't do much, so they're telling their kids, we need you to push this fucking message. We need you to push this. Yeah, we might have lost the war, but this is how you win wars, is with the information. Same thing that has taken place over in the, what is it? Are we in the East? Whatever the fuck, Europe, ancient Europe. You seen how it goes. The people who write the war are the people who tell you how it went down. So a lot of people south of the Winn-Dixie or in the Confederate States, they're going to consider that the shit wasn't that bad. It wasn't that bad. That's what they're going to tell you, is because that's what they've been taught. And that's what they've been trying to push since the end of the war.
Commemorate it, because the big challenge by 1900 was there's a new generation of white Southerners being born, and they never experienced the war years.
That push is visible. Most of Confederate monuments were erected during the UDC's height of influence.
There's a rhetoric.
Meaning none of the Confederate soldiers actually did this. Just their family members. People who heard, didn't see shit, just heard about all of the stuff that happened during the war. And this was right in between World War I.
Around monuments, that we want to get this thing built before all of that generation has died off, and the reason we want it is to teach future generations about those men.
Dr. Karen Cox wrote the book on the UDC, and I asked her if it was fair to say the group established the lost cause as historical fact in the South.
Oh my God, yeah, they were the leaders of the lost cause into the 20th century, and they made it a movement about vindication.
Just to give you an idea of how effective they were, they successfully lobbied for a Confederate memorial in Arlington National Cemetery, which U.S. President Woodrow Wilson proudly unveiled to a cheering crowd.
Let me pause that. Y'all motherfuckers understand how crazy that shit is? Y'all get that? For my black people watching, I'm gonna put it in street terms. It's like me being Pyru, right? Right? Pyru, blood, you know, soup, all that shit. That's like me being Pyru. I've been fighting it out with some Crip gang for years. My gang been beefing with these niggas, right? And they stay on the other side of town. And then somehow I die by the hands of them, right? And y'all bury me on their side of town, next to their homies where they died. You know that shit won't sit well. Come on, bro. That shit don't make no sense. I couldn't go down right now. That could not go down right now. In this time and day, could not do that.
And That's influence, right?
Monuments are the least of what they did.
What?
I mean, they are the most visible and tangible, but the work with children was far more
But wait, there's more.
influential.
It turns out a central UDC objective is shaping how children think about the war.
So this is how people learned and keep that hatred going. This is how people keep that hatred going, and that's being taught. Yeah, y'all might not be teaching this shit at home. Okay, y'all probably right. You're probably not teaching this shit at home, but you sending your kids to fucking programs that's teaching them this though. You'll see.
And their Southern heritage. One of their most powerful tools? Textbooks. Take a look at this pamphlet called A Measuring Rod for Textbooks. It was written by the illustrious Southern historian Miss Mildred Rutherford, an educator, orator, and author of Southern history textbooks. She's also very pro-slavery. The
Oh, what? Pro-slavery.
pamphlet announced the formation of a textbook review committee featuring prominent Southerners like 5 former Confederate generals. This group was committed.
Bro, just imagine sending your kid to a school where your enemy is teaching your kid about a battle you and the enemy had. They're teaching them their side of it, and just their side. Not the whole thing, just their side. That's a little biased to me. Education shouldn't be biased.
To spreading the truths of Confederate history, so they instructed school boards to reject any textbooks that did not accord full justice to the South. And they urged libraries to deface every book in their collection that didn't measure up by writing the words "unjust to the South" clearly on its cover. This pamphlet was shared widely with school boards throughout the South, and UDC-backed committees closely monitored history books to make sure. And
then I know a lot of y'all gonna say, okay, this is the South. What does that have to do with all the northern states, right? Because there's still a lot of this BS in this flag being flown in Ohio, Pennsylvania. That's just from what I know. Other states I have no idea about. But y'all gonna be surprised how far this movement actually traveled to places that I've never seen the Civil War, but you'll see in a second.
Northern influence never reached classrooms. So the core language of an approved textbook aligned precisely with that of the Lost Cause. You know, stuff like,
the Confederacy lost in the war between the states, but Georgia never forgot to honor her Confederate soldiers.
History of Georgia was on the UDC's approved list. It was also written by E. Merton Coulter, a self-described Southern historian and historian-described white supremacist.
They understand that how you educate, who wins the writing.
You see what I'm talking about. This is what I meant by the title. The Confederates won the information war. The white supremacists, the racists, what you want to call them, the pro-slavery people, these people got smart and decided to win the information war. If they could tell the story, then it doesn't matter how it really went down, because if 20 fucking or 50 years from now, no one is going to be alive to no one's going to be alive to say they ever seen it. So they only have what's documented. And if what you have documented is prominent and that is considered the information, that is now the truth. Do you get what I'm saying? This is how the truth and information is controlled. It's about who puts it out and who has control of it. It isn't about unbiased and telling what's actually out there. It's about telling your story, and if your story is what people gravitate to, or if you can make people gravitate to it, and that be the prominent story, then that story is now truth. That is how it goes for everything. Everything. That includes college textbooks. As you can see, high school textbooks, it doesn't fucking matter. People have to approve. It's all about a census. It's not about truth or, accepting the truth and accepting the lies and then deciphering. People gonna feed you information and they're gonna tell you this is truth. This isn't lie. This is truth. If you don't have truth next to lie, you're not gonna know what the fuck the difference is.
Who wins the battle over history ultimately wins the war. That's the big fight for the UDC.
But their work with children went further than the classrooms. The UDC formed an auxiliary group called the Children of the Confederacy, which was designed to get kids born in former Confederate states to actively participate in their version of history. Group leaders had kids recite call and response truths from something called the Confederate Catechism.
You see that? I'll just pause right here. Did the South fight for slavery? No. For had Lincoln not sent the armies to the South, the country would not have done fighting at all. Okay, so why would he send troops to the South if it wasn't for slavery? Huh? And why would it all of a sudden end once the South got beat? Okay, it doesn't make sense to me. Someone answer that for me. Let me know.
Children up to the age of 18 would compete and be rewarded for memorizing.
What did the South fight for? It fought to repel invasion for self-government. By self-government meaning do whatever they want, such as own other people. That's what it means. I mean, to be real with you, self-government doesn't sound too bad if it's organized right, but you also have to have human rights in order for a self-government to actually be successful. And by human rights, that means to treat everyone as a human and not anything less. But continuing, for self-government, just as the fathers of the American Revolution had done. Lincoln himself confessed at first they had no constitutional right to make war against the state. Okay, so I guess that's the partial truth, because from what I understand, the Confederate States wanted to branch off and become their own country and their own thing. And meaning once they do that, they have the freedom of being a slave state or slave area. So with that being said, yeah, they fought for self-government, and just like how the first forefathers did. They tried to break away from Britain so they can form their own government. They were trying to do the same. But the problem was, I mean, I don't know if this was Lincoln's intention, but like one issue, bro, is okay, you can go and do that, but you can't be treating niggas or humans, period, less than human. You could do whatever the fuck you want, but doing that, bro, that's not okay, especially when we right next to each other, and we gotta see that shit. Plus, we got family that we travel, and we travel these lands all the time, and we got family down there. Like, bro, we can't just be cool with that shit. Like, that shit can't slide.
Long passages of lost cause rhetoric.
So it would be like an after-school thing, you know, like if that was your club, you would go after school to
After school club. Like I said, niggas wasn't getting this shit taught to them in their homes. They got taught right after school about this shit.
the meeting of the children of the Confederacy, and your leader might teach you songs of the South, like Dixie or other songs that were considered Southern patriotic songs. They would have them write essays, go visit the veterans, and learn this catechism.
Children were also the centerpiece of their community's monument unveilings, like this living flag at the dedication of the Stonewall Jackson Monument in Richmond. Yes, those are school children. The UDC's efforts shaped the identities of children who grew up with the lost cause. They made history personal, and that made their story last longer.
Generations of children learning that narrative in a variety of ways grow up to be, you know, segregationists in the 50s and 60s, because that's been drilled into them since they were children.
You see what I'm talking about? 50s and 60s, right? This shit happened right before World War I, which happened in 1914. So that's a 40-year span. Just think about it. If they hit you when you was born in, let's say, in the 1900s, right? At 1900 on the dot, and you was born then, you was getting taught up until 1914, right? By the time 1914 comes, you're 14, almost a teenager. By the time the 1950s come, you're about 60 years old, and you already been in a political seat, a lawyer, a mayor, some type of politician, and now you got the ability to cause legislative changes such as separate but equal type shit. This is how it happens, by telling the wrong ways of history. So when you motherfuckers want to say, yeah, we stand behind the flag, just understand, when you stand behind that flag, that continues the cycle of hatred. And you might not even understand that. Some of y'all don't understand it. Some of y'all actually do, and you still decide to stand behind that flag. That's on you. But for the ones who didn't know, I'm telling you right now, bro, that's not what it's about. It continues the cycle of hatred, because that's what it was intended for.
After World War I, the UDC started losing steam, but the damage was done. The monuments were in place, and the textbooks they wrote remained in Southern classrooms until the late 70s. And the women's group did it all without the right to vote or participate in politics.
You can still get glimmers of this lost cause memory of the war from people who will always choose to see it through the personal. And I think the UDC, to a great extent, was their goal.
So the next time someone says the Confederate monuments are about remembering our history, just know that that's exactly what the United Daughters of the Confederacy wants you to think.
Enough said, man. Hold up, I gotta move because I'm about to be in the sunlight and I ain't trying to be baking out here. I got a hoodie on. And we back. Alright, so that's just the first video. I was trying to get to, and this is just a clip of a daughter of the Confederates, just to see what their mindset is, and you know how they go about this. This is, when was this recorded? Ain't got no info on this. So at least a year ago.
Which chapter?
We are Turner Ashby 184, United Daughters of the Confederacy. I'm Kimberly Mock. I'm the president of the chapter. The last 2 weekends, I've missed memorial services relatively closer to me than this one, Front Royal, and the one in Newmarket prior to that, and because of my kids' soccer. So I thought, you know, I want to see somebody else's before our 6th of June. So I thought I'd come down here, and it's a beautiful campus.
As a Yankee.
This is in Virginia. As you can see from the last map, the daughter of the Confederates wasn't in Virginia at the time, if I'm not mistaken, according to the map in the last video. We about to go scroll back, so we got time.
UDC-backed committee, also written by children, went further. Group leaders had kids recite call and response called the Children of the Confederacy, which was designed to get kids born in former Confederate states to...
Alright, I was wrong. It did get Virginia right there, so yeah. And then this totally makes sense.
We
Confederate cemetery.
The Confederacy with slavery.
Right, and I understand that, but
Yeah, explain.
you know, yes, slavery was a very hot topic back then, I guess you could say, even 20 years prior to that, even, especially in the Kansas, Missouri border states, the abolitionists and all that went on out there. The war was fought more. States' rights started everything, I feel.
And again, this is her opinion. Like she just said, she feels. But don't forget, this is also what they've been taught through this organization called the Daughter of the Confederacies. This organization is what, over 100 years strong now.
The South wanted to do things their way, and the North wanted to control that. And that's basically what fueled the fire for South Carolina to succeed from the Union.
Listen, you got to give the North their props, even if it wasn't the intentions. But you got to understand, like, the South, what I can agree with, is doing whatever the fuck you want to do. That is fine, especially if you're going to have the government in place to do so. If that's what y'all was doing back in the day, fine, bro. But the human rights, the owning of people, like, bro, did y'all expect people to just sit back and do nothing? Especially when they got family down there? Like, be real. And then being so misinformed, like, bro, I'm not about to go down this rabbit hole, but like, that's not what it was about. It was because people who were already here that looked like slaves, the slaves that y'all brought over here, was fighting y'all, and niggas just wasn't with the shits, and it turned into a war, and the North helped, and they finessed and got the whole motherfucking country through it, and put motherfuckers on reservations and land out in Oklahoma, and rewrote our history and got us classified as fucking Negroes and blacks and African Americans, and burned down all types of great innovations such as the Tulsa riots and the burning of all the Black Wall Streets, and you through that rabbit hole. But back to the video.
To begin with.
Company A, 5th South Carolina Infantry. James H. Ingalls, Company F, 22nd Virginia Infantry. John J. Meade, Company D, 24th Virginia Infantry.
Randolph was given the same honors that at her funeral that had been bestowed upon Mrs. Jefferson Davis. Pretty impressive.
And see, it just as a black man, I can't help but feel the majority of that people at that place might not like me. It's just what I feel. Probably not fact. Probably won't be like that if I happen to be around these people. But this is just what I'm telling you, what the normal black man would feel about a situation like this. Just giving you that perspective. All right. So let's get to this before I get to what I want to get to.
Apparently what passes for journalism these days, it's titled Rebel Monuments Offensive. And it argues that a Confederate monument has no place upon the battlefield of Gettysburg. Get this, we asked that the Gettysburg Battlefield Association cause the said rebel monuments to be removed, and express orders given that no more of that nature be erected. Well, I'm sorry to say, Pittsburgh Dispatch, that we Confederates are a part of history, and you don't get to pick and choose which parts of history to remember just because they triggered you. Who in God's name wrote this trash? Some green-haired hipster, no doubt. Let's see, Abe Patterson, post number 88, Grand Army of the Republic.
Sorry, I got something stuck in my teeth. I ain't got no floss.
Branch of the Grand Army in Allegheny City. Wait, what's the date on this? October 24th, 1889. Grand Army of the Republic. More like not so grand soy boys of the safe space.
All right.
Going to be breaking down the best good faith arguments in favor of Confederate monuments. While I'll occasionally offer up my opinion when I feel like it's relevant, I'm going to be basing most of my arguments in historical fact.
Thank you.
That history happened in 1865 or in 2017. All my sources are in the description.
Removing Confederate monuments is a slippery slope. What's next? Removing statues of Washington?
Removing Confederate monuments is a slippery slope. What's next? Removing the statues of Washington and Jefferson because they own slaves.
And Jefferson just because they own slaves?
This argument is predicated on two assumptions. The first one is that as of early June 2020, the removal of Confederate statues has been a widespread phenomenon. This is demonstrably false. This map shows...
Listen, whenever I play a video at this speed, I'm doing this so I can avoid copyright infringement. But if you need to, all you do is go down here, press the settings, playback speed, and slow it up so you can hear it slowly. Just so you know. But I want you to look at this map here. Do y'all notice something? Y'all notice something? This the down here, that's understandable. But do you notice there are Confederate statues and monuments in Iowa, Ohio, even part of Pennsylvania? Where else? Nevada, California, Oregon, Idaho, Montana, South Dakota, Washington State. Were they a part of the Confederacy? It's a real question. I really don't know, but to be real with you, I'm gonna assume they not. So this is what I'm saying when it comes to these monuments. The influence of the Daughters of the Confederacy was strong. You see how far the fuck that moved out. But this is how many monuments they got out right now in the United States.
Of all Confederate symbols standing before 2015 across the United States. By symbols, I mean statues, memorials, as well as streets, schools, military bases, parks, trails, and more that are named after prominent Confederates. Let's see how many monuments were removed in the Great Purge of the last 5 years. Oh. Seems most of the monuments glorifying the Confederacy are still standing. Not exactly a coordinated and conspiratorial campaign to scrub America clean of its Confederate history. The second thing that it's predicated on is the idea that the impetus behind removing Confederate statues comes from the top down. The crazies will tell you that it's George Soros, which is, I mean, I know you don't believe that because you're not a complete idiot. And if that were the case, then where's my fucking check, George? It's also not a directive from the Democratic establishment or coastal elitists or whatever. No, the calls to remove Confederate statues in the South have been overwhelmingly local grassroots efforts. The order to remove 4 Confederate statues here in New Orleans was the result of a city council vote after widespread public outrage following the 2015 Charleston, South Carolina shootings. Old Joe, the Confederate statue in Gainesville, Florida, was removed by order of the county commissioner. In 2017, the city of Memphis wanted to remove their
It was
Confederate
already in
statues,
my
but
mouth.
the Tennessee state law prevented them from doing so. To get around it, they sold the land that the statues were on to a nonprofit, which promptly took them down. But in response, Republicans in the Tennessee state legislature cut $250,000 from the city's funding. Many Democrats and even some Republicans called it a punitive measure. In Lexington, Kentucky, a county council proposal to remove their 2 Confederate monuments met with unanimous approval. They took the monuments and put them in a local cemetery. The mayor said of the decision, this was a local decision, as it should be. While the governor of Kentucky compared the removal of these monuments to ISIS, destroying antiquities in Iraq and Syria. Early in 2019, the city of Winston-Salem, North Carolina, which I called home for 4 years, asked the United Daughters of the Confederacy to remove their Confederate monument. When the UDC refused, the city...
United Daughters of the Confederacy to remove their monument. You heard what he just said.
Sued them. The monument was removed 2 months later. Time and time again, we see that the push for removal comes from these majority Democrat, largely African-American southern cities, and the biggest obstacle comes from these Republican-dominated state legislatures. Does that really seem fair to you? Should a higher political power be telling a local community what they should be doing with their own statues? Live and let live, I hear some folks say. But more to your point, are Washington and Jefferson really next? Well, it is true that some people on the left have called for the removal of monuments to the slave-owning founding fathers. But among Democrats, it remains a very, very fringe opinion. According to PolitiFact, between August 11th and August 22nd, 2017, as the Unite the Right rally dominated the news, 2,113 news articles mentioned the removal of Confederate statues. Only 183 mentioned taking down statues to Washington and Jefferson. And the majority weren't talking about anything that any liberal had proposed.
Got it.
They were referencing this.
Excuse me. Are we going to take down statues to George Washington? How about Thomas Jefferson? What do you think of Thomas Jefferson? You like him? Okay, good. Are we going to take down the statue? Because he was a major slave owner.
Even Annette Gordon-Reed, professor of legal history at Harvard, who made her name exposing the sordid relationship between Thomas Jefferson and his slave, Sally Hemings, said of the controversy, we can distinguish between the people who wanted to build the United States of America and the people who wanted to destroy it.
Removing Confederate monuments is tantamount to erasing history. We can't erase history just because some people find it offensive.
This argument is profoundly ironic. The people who put up the majority of Confederate monuments, such as the United Daughters of the Confederacy, related monument associations, Confederate Veterans Associations.
So not only is there the Daughters of the Confederacy, whatever the fuck they are, Daughters of the Confederacy, that is a huge organization pushing for these monuments to be up and pushing Confederate history. You have all of these other organizations that he's naming that are pushing this.
And their children are directly responsible for propagating the misinformation and outright fabrication that has for 150 years given white Americans a rosy, happy, sunshine and puppies view of the Confederacy. In short, the monument builders themselves wanted to erase history because they found it offensive. Many of you seem to be under the impression that the lost cause myth is not a myth, that it's a legitimate historical interpretation. The Civil War from the Southern point of view. I'm sorry to say that's just not the case. The tenets of the lost cause obfuscate and twist the truth. And
the tenets of the lost cause. You heard what he just said. You heard what he... You know, let me go back, because it might be important. This was done June 6, 2020. Just so you know, reference. Oh, shit. I forgot where we were.
View of the Confederacy. In short, the monument builders themselves wanted to erase history because they found it offensive. Many of you seem to be under the impression that the lost cause myth is not a myth, that it's a legitimate historical interpretation. The Civil War from the Southern point of view. I'm sorry to say that's just not the case. The tenets of the lost cause obfuscate and twist the truth, and the development of the myth is extremely well documented. It began as a post-war effort to try and justify secession, typified by the memoirs of men like Jubal Early and Jefferson Davis. Publications like these Southern Historical Society papers whitewashed the brutality of slavery and minimized its...
Whitewash the brutality of slavery. You heard what the fucking man said.
...role in starting the Civil War. And then, of course, there is the Edward A. Pollard book titled The Lost Cause, which was incredibly influential. It's often described as a history book, just kind of, again, history from the Southern point of view, but it's a little more of a pro-Confederate editorial. After Reconstruction, the Lost Cause...
A pro-Confederate editorial.
...to take shape as a belief system. Southern white women, relying on a 19th century belief that women were inherently apolitical, organized memorial associations to supplement the political literature of their husbands, brothers, and fathers. It's largely due to these women that we have so many Confederate statues here. And beyond that, statues that explicitly glorify the Confederate cause.
He's talking about the Daughters of the Confederacy.
It's important to understand that this effort didn't come out of a vacuum. Ex-Confederates didn't just want to apologize.
Just so you know, this is the title of the video at the top, man. So if you need to go search this, he has all of the reference that he's popping up right here at the bottom. It's all in his description.
Their reputations. They also wanted to reverse the effects of the war through political agitation. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th granted black Americans citizenship. The 15th, and beyond that, statues that explicitly glorify the Confederate cause. It's important to understand that this effort didn't come out of a vacuum. Ex-Confederates didn't just want to polish their reputations. They also wanted to reverse the effects of the war through
You heard what he said, reverse the effects of the war.
Political agitation. The 13th Amendment abolished slavery. The 14th granted black Americans citizenship. The 15th protected the voting rights of black men. If the plantation class, who had enjoyed unparalleled supremacy across the South before the war, didn't fight these measures, then they would lose their political grip on that region for good. So they fought tooth and nail, using every tactic in the book. Southern states instituted poll taxes and literacy tests, which not only kept black people from the polls, but also many poor whites. And while you saw those sorts of tactics getting used up north too, at the end of the 19th century, in particular in regards to the immigrant vote, voter suppression in the South was also characterized by widespread terrorist violence in a way that you did not see up north. Southern political leaders did not quietly support this violence. They didn't just turn a blind eye. No. They openly and vocally endorsed it.
Is that right? You said political leaders?
In 1900, Senator Benjamin Tillman of South Carolina went so far as to defend white supremacist violence in his home state on the floor of the United States Senate.
Who? Just look at this man. He ain't even got an eyeball.
Did not disenfranchise the Negroes until 1895. Then we had a constitutional convention which took them out of Congress, deliberately and avowedly with the purpose of disenfranchising as many from the good of the 14th and 15th Amendments. We adopted the educational qualification was the only means left to us, and the Negro is as contented and as prosperous and as well protected in South Carolina today as in any state of the Union south of the Potomac. He is not meddling with politics, for he found that the more he meddled with on the bus off, he got. As to his rights, I would not discuss them now. We of the South have never recognized the right of the Negro to govern white men, and we never will.
I'm going to just leave this right here. As to his rights, I will not discuss them now. We of the South have never recognized the right of the Negro to govern white men, and we never will. We have never believed him to be equal to the white man and will not submit to his gratifying his lust on our wives and daughters without lynching him.
We have never believed him to be equal to the white man, and we will not submit to his gratifying his lust on our wives and daughters without lynching him. I would to God the last of them was in Africa, and that none had ever been.
I would to God the last one of them was in Africa, and none of them had ever brought to our shores.
Confederate memorial associations never explicitly stated that the purpose of their monuments was to intimidate black people or to celebrate the planter class's reascension to political power after Reconstruction. But given their ringing endorsements of racial violence and oppression, there can be little doubt that this was the case. I don't think anyone said it more succinctly than Annie Cooper Burton, president of the Wade Hampton chapter of the United Daughters of the Confederacy based in Los Angeles. In 1916, she wrote a book titled simply The Ku Klux Klan. And at the end of
this is somebody who,
her introduction, she states,
Its work was noble.
Oppression. There can be little doubt that this was the case.
Again,
I don't think anyone said it more succinctly than Annie Cooper Burton, president
Annie Cooper Burton,
of the Wade Hampton chapter of the United Daughters.
President of the Wade Hampton chapter of the United Daughters of the Confederacy, Los Angeles.
Based in Los Angeles. In 1916, she wrote a book titled simply The Ku Klux Klan. And at the end of
So remember, when you start saying this is not what the flag represented, yeah, sure, doesn't fucking matter. When you rocking this flag, what time do you think the flag is representing? The time before this, before 1916, when one of the daughters of the Confederate wrote a book titled The Ku Klux Klan? Was it beforehand when it was the Southerners fighting because they wanted to govern their own selves and be allowed to do whatever the fuck they want, which included have slaves, and that included treating these people less than human? Is that when you were representing? Is that what the flag you're representing? Is that the time you're talking about? I know a lot of y'all say, yeah, that I know some people think it means this and this is what it represents, but that's not what it means to me. It means when it was this. So I want to know, at what period does your flag represent? Does it represent the latest period, the oldest period, when the flag represented self-governance to do whatever the fuck you wanted, which included having slaves, aka having human beings and treating them less than such? Or was it at this point in time where the flag meant things such as the Ku Klux Klan? You know, hatred towards others that weren't like you. I think it's going to get a little bit more recent, but we can figure out what time period your flag, your Confederate flag represents when you rock it. And if that's the case, please explain that. Write that on the flag at least. Flag 1863 on your flag 1863, so I know that's the time period that your flag represents. Or spray paint or put on it 19 in a nice font, 1916, so I know that you about racism too. I mean, any time period of the flag is pretty much racism, but you put 1916 on it, I'm obviously know what you really about.
In her introduction, she states,
Its work was nobly done, and our rescued South still sings her gratitude to her heaven-sent protectors, the mysterious KKK.
We're not erasing history by taking down Confederate monuments. We're course-correcting against openly racist, demonstrably false political propaganda that has dominated American historiography for far too long.
I'll grant you that the Confederates fought for an unjust cause, but keeping their monuments in place reminds us of that dark period in American history. Those who do not learn from history are doomed to repeat it.
As I intimated at the beginning of the
That is the dumbest shit I ever heard.
video, many Union veterans would disagree with you on that. That article from 1889 referred to a petition that had been filed from GAR Post 88, protesting the erection of the first Confederate monument at the Gettysburg Battlefield. The men of Post 88, based in Pittsburgh,
Remember what I just fucking said? Oh, based in Pittsburgh. You remember what the fuck I just said? That's like me being Pyru. I've been beefing with these Crip niggas for a minute, and when I finally die, I'm buried in a cemetery, and y'all got my monument, but hella Pyru shit on it. So y'all know it's me, and in a motherfucking Crip graveyard, like.
shed blood at Gettysburg, and they felt betrayed that the Gettysburg Battlefield Memorial Association would commemorate the disloyal deeds of a rebel regiment. In response to the petition, Governor James Beaver of Pennsylvania, who was himself a Gettysburg veteran, stated,
I am strongly in favor of the government making appropriations to erect markers on positions occupied by the Confederate commands, as a matter of history, but I am and always will be opposed to any rebel organization erecting its own monuments.
Then, as now, the issue was incredibly controversial. Post 88 received considerable support from other GAR chapters across the country, but ex-Confederates, Southern sympathizers, and even some Unionists in the spirit of national reconciliation fiercely opposed the petition. But Post 88 doubled down. On Halloween 1889, the Dispatch published an absolutely scathing statement from the group, titled, By Their Proper Names.
As soldiers and citizens, we have no apologies to make for calling words by their proper names. Traitor a traitor, and rebel a rebel. We reiterate that we are opposed to the erection of monuments by the great or small upon the battlefields of Gettysburg or any other place that will in the slightest degree make glorious the deeds of those who trampled underfoot the national ensign. We believe in making treason odious.
If y'all don't get what he just said, man, he not cool with y'all posting up shit in their graveyard knowing they beat their ass, and then you gonna celebrate that they got their ass whooped. They not cool with that. And that was when that shit first went down.
The general of Post 88 then clarified his group's position in a letter to a Gettysburg historian, saying of former Confederates,
You know they do not care for history. When they erect their monuments, it is to honor their dead and vaunt their rebellious acts.
And while there's nothing wrong with honoring war dead, if you honestly believe that these statues have ever had anything to do with historical education, then I'm sorry to say you've been had. And in fact, the only people these days who propose to do anything with these statues to promote historical education are in my camp, not yours. Among the anti-monument crowd, the overwhelming consensus is that they belong in a museum. But the trouble is, very few museums actually want them. Big statues are expensive to maintain, and the logistical problems of putting a gigantic outdoor statue into an indoor museum with limited space is troublesome to say the least. Maybe we should take the most famous ones and place them in a new museum dedicated to American slavery and black oppression. It could be a sobering experience, putting these statues in a different context. But then you always run the risk of having such a museum turn into a shrine for white supremacists. Just look at what's happening in Germany with Holocaust museums and concentration camps. It's a pickle, for sure. I don't really have a good answer for this problem. I think the Confederate statues should come down as soon as possible, but what do we do with them then?
We're gonna have to look into that. What's happening, man? I'm sorry if I'm tapping the mic. We're gonna have to look into what's happening in Germany with, what did he say?
Museums and concentration camps. It's a pickle, for sure. I don't really have a good answer for this problem. Yes, putting these statues in a different context. But then you always run the risk of having such a museum turn into a shrine for white supremacists. Just look at what's happening in Germany with Holocaust museums and concentration camps. It's a pickle.
Holocaust museums and concentration camps. So if I had to assume, he's probably saying that's where a bunch of fucking Nazis meet up to go look at this shit.
For sure. I don't really have a good answer for this problem. I think think that Confederate statues should come down as soon as possible. But what do we do with them then? I really don't know. If they do go to museums, then that's something that'll probably happen years.
All right. So I got my information from out of that. I just want y'all to see that. Hope y'all understand. And like I said, man, he got all of his sources in the description right here, man. All right here. All right. So, all right. You see, I was already on this, man, because this was an interesting video. But remember this name, Alfred Moore Waddell. That's at the 8:40 mark. But this video popped up. This was recorded a year ago yesterday. This is the 21st, Father's Day. I'm recording this, so very interesting story. All right, let's get into it.
For a long time, if you went to the library,
and y'all probably wondering why the fuck where am I getting at with this? Basically, you're gonna understand what the connection with the Confederacy has with the politicians and politics now, and how everything translates. So this is part about partial, you know, about the flag, and then the other partial thing about black people and our political standing as of right now. We came a long way, but we still stagnant. So let's get to it.
In Wilmington, North Carolina, there was one thing you weren't allowed to research.
We were refused. We were rejected by the librarian.
When I asked about or inquired about 1898, they wanted to know why.
I was told that,
also, this is a video from Vox. Shout out Vox. Don't sue me.
yes, they had something, but they kept it under lock and key.
The story of Wilmington in 1898 still isn't widely known. What happened here on what's now just this empty patch of grass would radically change racial politics in North Carolina. This is the story of an American election, but also of something we don't usually find in American history: the violent overthrow of a democratically elected government. In the late 1800s, Wilmington, North Carolina was the state's largest city. It had a majority black population, and historians today describe it as a rarity in the post-Civil War American South.
Wilmington, prior to November 1898, was what the New South could be at the cusp of the 20th century.
There was an unusual degree of black prosperity.
In Wilmington, there were successful black entrepreneurs, doctors, teachers, but...
Man, y'all need to look into this. Man, I guarantee you them schools was Indian schools, but that's a different subject.
Also black elected officials. And for a time, that was true throughout the state. Take a look at the politicians on this poster of the 1889 North Carolina House of Representatives. Here at the bottom...
I'm gonna just let y'all know. To all my people watching, all my brothers, my niggas, man, we was Republicans, man. These Democrats is not for us, bruh. They not.
Are black Republican representatives, some from Wilmington. North Carolina also sent 4 black Republicans to the U.S. Congress between 1875 and 1899. The Democratic and Republican parties of 1898 in many ways occupied opposite parts of the political spectrum than they do today.
Most African Americans were voting for the Republican Party, and the Democratic Party was white voters almost exclusively. White supremacy was the central focus of the platform for the Democratic Party.
Republicans in North Carolina were successful...
Did you not hear what she just said? White supremacy was the focus of the Democratic Party. And here you motherfuckers is voting for these motherfuckers, and y'all thinking shit changed. Ain't shit changed but the actions. They said instead of trying to go against y'all niggas, we gonna make y'all be with us. And here we are voting for these motherfuckers.
Part because of a third party called the Populist Party, made up of mostly white farmers fed up with the tough economic times. North Carolina populists joined up with Republicans to form what they called the Fusion Party.
Man, this story about to show y'all how crazy racist elite motherfuckers get when we team the fuck up. When white and black team the fuck up. This is a story of what the fuck happens when black and white people team the fuck up and we got something good going. and then you got racist elite motherfuckers who hating on niggas, going past the dumb boundaries of race and skin color. This is what the fuck happens.
In the elections of 1894 and 1896, the Fusion Party defeated the Democrats in sweeping victories statewide. That meant North Carolina now had a government that shared power between black and white politicians, including a newly elected Republican governor. Together, they moved towards reforms that would favor black Americans and working-class whites.
This was something that the Democratic Party folks were simply not going to accept.
A multiracial government wasn't just a disappointment for Democrats. It was more like a humiliation. They needed a plan to take back control of the state in the next election. So party leaders like Furnifold Simmons, future U.S. Senator, Charles Aycock, future North Carolina governor, and this man, Alfred Moore Waddell, came up with one to beat the Fusion Party by luring white populist voters away from their alliance with black voters. Wilmington, with a large black population and a local fusion government in power,
They do this today. They still do this.
Be a focus of their campaign. The State Democratic Party Handbook for 1898 laid out their goal: consolidate the white vote by stoking white anger and resentment. It said, this is a white man's country, and white men must control and govern it. Their most effective tool was the media. One of North Carolina's biggest newspapers was a Democratic Party mouthpiece. It ran
They still do this.
racist political cartoons throughout 1898.
Not everybody was literate in 1898, but to see a political cartoon of the type that ran, you may not be able to read it, but you know exactly what it means.
Many of the cartoons were centered on the threat of Negro rule, even though the fusion government was mostly white. They also played up another fear.
Black men threatening white women became a thing. White men need to do all that they can to protect white womanhood.
This was all part of North Carolina Democratic strategy, but it echoed the national racist rhetoric of the time. In one speech that Democrats printed in Wilmington paper, a prominent Georgia writer named Rebecca Felton said,
"If it takes lynching a black man a day to protect white womanhood, I say lynch."
Her speech prompted a Wilmington black man named Alex Manley, owner of the Black Run Daily Record newspaper.
Y'all see this shit? Y'all know this wasn't that long ago.
To respond with a column, he made a simple observation that, at the time, was shocking.
That white women who had liaisons with black men did so voluntarily and enthusiastically.
Manley wrote, "Every Negro lynched is called a big, burly black brute, when in fact, many were sufficiently attractive for white girls to fall in love with them."
Manley pretty much said, in a nutshell, sometimes white women choose to be with black men.
Manley's editorial became another tool for Democrats. Newspapers reprinted it, called it a horrid slander, and ran comments about it on a daily basis. It was just a few months before the election, and white voters were angry.
By the time the election rolls around on November 8th, black voters, Republican voters, had been thoroughly intimidated here.
By all accounts, the elections of 1898 were a sham. The Democratic Party had a paramilitary group called the Red Shirts. They attacked and blocked black residents from voting. At a rally just before the election, Alfred Moore Waddell provoked the crowds. He said, "Negro office holding ought at once and forever be brought to an end."
Sound real familiar. Like Soros?
Even if we have to choke the current of the Cape Fear River with carcasses. The votes were counted, and the Democrats won.
Democratic candidates won every seat they had a candidate up for election in.
But some local fusionist politicians remained in power because their seats hadn't been up for re-election, like the white Republican mayor and the Board of Aldermen. And of course, the election did nothing to undo the economic power black folks held in the city. The Democrats had won the election, but their goal of total white supremacist control remained out of reach.
And so they engineered what was essentially a coup d'etat.
The day after the election, at a gathering for white men in Wilmington, the Democrats unveiled a document called the White Declaration of Independence. It
Y'all ready for this?
contained an ultimatum. Cynthia Brown, whose descendants were in Wilmington back in 1898, is a historian at her church where there's a preserved copy of the Declaration from the next day's newspaper.
"We will no longer be ruled and will never again be ruled by men of African origin."
They would strip black men of voting rights. They would give white men a large part of the employment heretofore given to black men. And as for Alex Manley, we demand that he leave this city forever within 24 hours. The next morning, hundreds of white men marched to the offices of the Daily Record. Manley was gone. He had fled to save his own life. They set the Daily Record building on fire. This is where it once stood.
Once the white leadership destroyed Alex Manley's printing press, they destroyed one way in which the African American community in Wilmington could organize itself and keep itself informed.
At City Hall, the mayor and Board of Aldermen were forced out.
There's 200 armed men in City Hall at the time. They didn't do it of their own free will. And as they resigned, a new member selected by the Democratic Party was voted into office.
Waddell, who once threatened to fill the Cape Fear River with black bodies, was the new mayor of Wilmington. Meanwhile, the mob had grown to about...
You see that? You see that? Same dude who incited the violence got voted into office. And you want to know why that's important? Let's go here, right? Alfred Moore Waddell, Democratic U.S. Congressman from North Carolina. He became mayor after leading the only coup d'etat on U.S. soil. Let's go look at his military career. We about to find out why this is so important. During the Civil War, Waddell joined the Confederacy as an adjutant, a military appointment given to an officer who assists the commanding officer with unit administration, mostly the management of human resources in the Army unit. So, yeah, this man was a part of the Confederacy. So, what I'm saying is, these people who claim that the Confederate flag didn't represent any of that. So, what time did your flag represent? Because this man was a part of the Confederacy and he was a known racist. Known racist. You heard what the man said. He led a coup d'etat getting black people out of this city. Like, burned this man's business down. So please tell me, what does it mean to you? And please back that up with some sources. We ain't talking about no fucking feelings. Fuck that feeling shit. Because if you feel that way, then I feel like fuck you. So just give me some sources. Back it up with some actual facts. And then maybe, you know, might change my mind. And, you know, I think I'm pretty understanding. So that's all I'm asking. But I guess the least I could do is play the rest of the video.
About 2,000 men, and the violence spilled into the streets. In these photos, X's mark where the first black residents were killed.
The stories are that they were dumped into the river.
So not only was he voted into office, they started killing black people as soon as he got in. And he condoned it.
And there are varying stories about how many people were killed.
I see 40 to 60 clearly as fatalities as a result of the violence, but I think it was higher.
Many black residents hid for days in the swamps and the wooded cemeteries in the city, including Cynthia's great-grandmother. And thousands of other residents fled Wilmington, never to return. Shortly afterward, Democrats printed booklets celebrating a glorious victory, and in the newspapers depicted black residents as the instigators.
This image is a gross misrepresentation.
And are you seeing what the fuck I'm talking about? This is what I'm saying. The Confederates might have lost the war, but they won the information war because these motherfuckers just like, man, we might as well say it. The Confederates might as well be synonymous with the Ku Klux Klan. And it's just like now, because history repeats itself. They get into office, they get into political positions, or they get into a position where they can enforce power such as police, and the racism shows. And this is the thing we're trying to explain to you people. And damn, that just sounds racist. My bad. This is what we try to explain to everybody who doesn't understand where black people is coming from. Like, this is what the fuck is happening. So when you say you rocking that flag, like, bro, this is what the fuck you're saying. This is what you're representing. Other than that, like, bro, there's nothing else you could really say. Like, these niggas get into office and they flex their power and use their power to kill us when it was okay to do so. Now they doing it a little bit more systematically by putting people in jail, in prison, and taking their life from them because they getting out and can't do shit because they a felon and they fucking 30, 45 years out from society and they don't know what the fuck to do. So they slip back into some bullshit and the same cycle repeats. This is the shit we talking about.
Representation of what actually happened during 1898. You know, what you see is African American men with guns, not white men with machine guns.
crazy, and they still control the narrative.
The city never regained its black majority population. Jim Crow laws, like literacy tests and poll taxes that prevented black people from voting, were immediately enacted, and Wilmington's spirit of black opportunity was crushed. Black political representation in the state was over. It would be 90 years until North Carolina elected its next black Congress member.
Wilmington did a really great job of covering up a very dark past for a very long time.
Over the years, the textbooks on North Carolina's history.
It's easy to do that when you control the information. Please understand, bro, there's all types of people controlling information right now. All types of entities controlling information. Politicians being some of them, companies being another. Like, y'all not getting it. But because y'all spoon fed this bullshit, this information, and you can regurgitate it, and you can get on Google, and you think because what they're showing you is information that, oh, if it's not there, it's not true. Bro, shut the fuck up. Be more smarter than that.
Have struggled to accurately describe what happened in 1898. This one from 1933 says the situation was unfortunate for both races, and this one from 1978 doesn't have that much more detail. But they both praise Charles Aycock, a politician who helped perpetrate the riot. They say he had a keen mind and a kind heart, and that, in fact, he was one of the best friends that the colored people had in the state. It's a legacy that North Carolina has yet to fully undo. The names of the perpetrators are on Wilmington school buildings and city parks. But the legacy is also bigger than those names. Turn on the news, and the state's long history of political suppression echoes.
To a strict new voter ID law in North Carolina, racial gerrymandering, and a push for new voting maps. The court says the Republican-led legislature redrew congressional districts along racial lines, violating the Constitution.
There's a tremendous amount of intimidation that is still felt by the black community.
It doesn't have to be mass mayhem and violence in the streets.
The strategy shifts towards designing state laws in such a way that you could exclude blacks from voter participation.
The subliminal pursuit of continuing the white Declaration of Independence.
And if you don't see it for what it really is, it can happen all over again.
Y'all see what the fuck going on? Y'all see what the fuck going on? It'd be crazy if fucking North Carolina was a Democratic state. Man, let me find out. Oh shit. Oh shit. Oh shit. Hold up. What party? The governor, Democrat. Okay. It's just crazy that was the first thing that popped up. Oh, excuse me. Well, I guess that's what's most important, huh? The governor is a Democrat. Ain't that some shit? Yeah. But I think this is about to conclude my my motherfucking presentation for today. So yeah, to sum it all up, those who rock the Confederate flag, I hope this information has showed you that, you know, or makes you reconsider the arguments you have when you try to present or trying to justify why you fly that flag. And again, I'm gonna say, man, if that's the case, let me know what time period that flag represent for you, because I'm gonna let you know whatever time period it represent. It represented some bullshit, and it represented racism. It represented treating niggas like me less than human. So like I can't necessarily be okay with it. But at the same time, I'm not gonna hate you for it. I'm not gonna, you know, despise you for it. But I know I'm gonna have to look at you a little bit different. That is what it is. But also, yeah, I'm hoping this information shows you that these same people who happen to fly those flags happen to not like people like me, and also has a history of wanting to kill people like me. And these people also have a history of controlling the information and controlling information about me or information going forward about situations in the past. And also just to show you how easy it is for people to control information, whether it be the politicians or companies. Like, people do this shit. So yeah, and I think that's just about it. Sun hit me pretty hard. I'm hot in this hoodie. I'm ready to go inside. I'm done with my bleeds. I hope y'all enjoyed this. I hope this was informative. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it.